morning, world. This is Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. I greet you live from the All-America city of Morrisville in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. North Carolina is the 8th largest state in the United States, and we welcome you anywhere in the show, anywhere from the world or country, to join us to talk about global affairs, innovation, an increasingly turbulent world, politically, economically, a banking situation or crisis going on in America with Silicon Valley Bank. And yes, in the United States, waiting for what's going to happen with former President Donald Trump, expected to be indicted any day now by a grand jury for hush money payments to pornography star Stormy Daniels. In addition, he's facing other legal battles, and this will bring into question his viability to run, but many people still think he has a chance to win the nomination. And will Joe Biden run again? Many people now wondering whether the president's approval ratings, which have sunk to an all-time low, have made it evident that he might be in a tough race, and that will he have primary challengers. Polling does show that Biden would defeat Trump again, but we just don't know whether Trump will be the nominee. Today, we're going to talk about dementia, which is an issue that's affecting many of our families. And tomorrow, we'll be talking about the Trump indictment, Biden's approval ratings, the banking crisis, and a topic that we're going to start talking about on this show, which is very concerning, is are we actually closer to a World War III than we've ever been? You've got to be reading the news or watching the news and getting concerned about not only the war in Ukraine, but the potential invasion of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, North Korea and Iran having nuclear weapons, and adversaries of the United States today being allied in a way that we haven't seen them allied, isolating the United States' foreign policy and position in the world. I think it's fair to say we have more nuclear capability today against the United States than we did during the Cold War. And this should be concerning to all of us. I know it sounds like something out of a Tom Clancy novel, or maybe Jack Ryan up there somewhere helping us deal with these kinds of things behind the scenes with the CIA and American intelligence. But one significant has to be seriously concerned about the state of global affairs. We'll be talking about that tomorrow and next week for much of our shows, and we'll be reaching out to some guests to talk about this. We welcome you, and let's get started. Mark, bring up our guest. I'm going to be here only for a few minutes today, but want to have a talk about dementia and what we can learn about it. We have with us John Campbell. John, thank you for being with us. Mark, join us too if you could.
Yep, thank you for having me.
Thank you,
Glad
John.
to have you, John. I know that one of the things you talk about is dementia care and even the importance of music to dementia care as well. And like Steve said earlier, dementia is something that is very much an issue in our society. I know that a lot of people are dealing with dementia and dealing with Alzheimer's and other kind of similar things in their life, and all in that space. We do know that it was harder to deal with it during the time of the pandemic and everything. But even in my own life, I had a great aunt that definitely had Alzheimer's, and I definitely have had friends and family that have had dementia. So I just wanted to know a little bit about your story around that. And if you could share with our global audience a little bit about what you went through in your caregiving, and also the importance of the arts in that caregiving.
Yes. Well, my mom, in 2012, we had already known my mom's had signs of dementia. The first time I really recognized it for sure was a year earlier when I went to visit her at her condo, and she had her tennis racket in her hand, which she played every day. And she was sitting in silence, looking confused. And I said, "How did her game go?" And she said, "She doesn't play anymore." It was 6 p.m. and the curtains were closed. So I knew when I left that day that it was definitely there. It wasn't a diagnosis yet. A year later, when I was in a transition, I went to my mom's and I decided I was just going to commit to be the caregiver of the family. I have 3 siblings. My mom and dad were divorced, but dating again at the time. So from 2012 until 2019, when she died, I was her live-in caregiver. I ran a business at the time. I'm a published author. Was writing some books during the time. So I learned a lot through trial and error through there, and also through support groups.
Yeah. What is one of the one things? Well, you said you recognized at that time. I know a lot of times people don't recognize when people are starting to slip into dementia. So, what are some of the things that you give as guides to let folks know, one, how to recognize it, and also how to deal with it? Because I do know that sometimes when people are going into dementia or Alzheimer's, they will relive past moments. They'll even have memories with folks that are long gone and all in that space. So if you could share a little bit about your thoughts around how folks can recognize dementia, and also what kind of preventive steps they can have to help their folks that are going through that.
Well, it is tricky in the beginning. I call it the early stages. That's a chapter I wrote in my book, but it's kind of like it comes in waves. But generally, if something doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. So, although there are 13 different types of dementia, so it isn't, this was classic Alzheimer's. But yeah, in those repeated stories were definitely one of the signs, definitely. And it's really hard to know what to do in the beginning because they aren't necessarily in a place where they can't function completely. So, but I think the earlier getting organized, but it is difficult with family and so forth. They don't want to accept it at times or don't believe it. So I guess for me, it was stepping in. The earlier, the better, though. That's for sure.
That makes sense. I know the book that you wrote is called Beyond the Fading Memories, Guiding Words for Dementia Caregivers. And of course, it is available on Amazon. So what advice would you give for those that are caregivers to those that are in that situation of dementia or Alzheimer's or some of the other ailments that are similar?
Well, one thing I do hear a lot, and it is a very difficult disease, but you usually hear people say it's a horrible disease. That's their answer to everything. But I think some of the key elements that I learned, and it is trial and error, it's a lot easier said looking back than when you're in the middle of it. But I think realizing that it's their brain function that's the issue. So their emotions are still there. And I think one of the most important things to do is to validate them. And, early on, you usually realize that arguing isn't going to do anything when it's because somebody lost their memory. For instance, when my mom's car was taken, she believed it was stolen and she complained every day. It was tiring and annoying, but I learned to validate her because in her mind, that's what happened. And there's no way to change that. So I think, and if we get riled up ourselves, which is understandable, you're going to be human, you're going to do it. It is going to rile them up. So the more validating and calm we can be, the better. But we've got to give ourselves a break and take care of ourselves. I definitely recommend support. And my sister and I went to get some help. And then I learned about support groups. And I went to them for many years and still go at this time. I will, I assume you're going to ask about the music. So
that's actually where I was going to go next and everything, because you do talk about the power of music and how music helped deal with dementia and definitely helped in that regards and everything. And I know Steve.
Yeah, and I got to leave early, but John, one question. Mark, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So yeah, as it relates to music, I did see something on 60 Minutes once with Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett, and it was amazing that when they played the music, that he was able to remember the lines, but and so it was surreal. I mean, they had him sitting in the living room, and he could barely remember like what day it was, what year it was, and then when they played the music, he could go right into like Tony Bennett playing at a major concert. And so they just couldn't figure it out. It was actually very emotional to watch, because then right after he played the music, they took him back in and they were like, Tony, what year is it? And he was, I don't know. And it said, Tony, what's your wife's name? And he says, I don't remember.
Yep.
What year were you born? I don't remember. Do you have a concert with Lady Gaga? He goes, I don't remember. I don't know. So my question is there any science about music and memory?
Well, yeah, there's been studies done that say that the music memory is the last to go with dementia. So it's pretty much, I was not shocked and surprised at all by that, just from what I've seen.
Right. Yeah, it was really, really hard for people to see. It was quite shocking, actually.
So it's kind of like, if you get the music in front of them, they'll remember everything. The challenge, maybe with him too, is everything else, getting them there, and they're confused otherwise.
But it's like embedded in memory because it was just so freaky, because they would start playing the song and he would go right into a Tony Bennett singing wonderful music. And wouldn't even have the words in front of him. I mean, it was like he was just singing like he was doing a concert.
Right. No doubt about that. How did the music impact your own care with your mom and everything, John? I'm going to bring in our other two panelists. Dan may have some thoughts, and Sasha too. And of course, we'll get to other issues on the news show, such as what's going on in Ukraine.
I'll be back tomorrow, John. But John, thank you for being with us today. Be back tomorrow morning. Okay. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you. So how did the music impact you and everything in that way, and the sense of the care and how you used music to help with the care?
Well, first of all, I don't know how much time I got. When I was really inspired by this was one day when I woke up. I was woken up by my mom singing America the Beautiful on her screen porch without a care in the world, in perfect tone, going to every line, even the parts that I didn't even know, had never sang before. And I realized this was powerful. So I went out and put out an ad and got women who had parents with dementia to come and play piano for her. I realized that it was important to bring music to her as much as possible. So I would do it on the computer, on the TV. My nieces and nephews who sang and played instruments came and sang with her. She did fall and break 13 bones in the end. And in the hospital, people came in and sang with her then. She lived another 6 months. And literally, if it ever came, she would forget about any confusion or anything like that. So it definitely, and there have been some tests done with people where they've stayed relaxed and their memory clear even for hours, possibly days after in some cases. So I don't feel it's taken seriously enough. I think we should be doing it as much as possible. And I'm happy to hear friends of mine are doing it at this time with their parents with dementia.
No, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Yeah. One of the things I was curious about, you mentioned being a author. Of course, this is a very personal book that you wrote because it was based on your own experiences and everything. But for those that are watching globally, what other books have you written outside of this one? And how difficult was it to write a book that is so much a part of your own life?
Okay, well, I've written a mix. By the way, I'm also a lyric writer, and I master recorded a song that I wrote for my mom's memorial. But I went to school at Columbia College for creative writing in the 80s, but then got sidetracked with a business. So it was window cleaning, something I didn't expect. And actually, my first self-published book was a memoir on that, about how I started it with no money in the streets of Chicago. But I live in Madison, Wisconsin now. So I self-published that in 2016. And then I did 2 fiction storybooks. At the time, my mom had her dementia and after her death, and then this one. Memoir, I'm entrepreneurial, so I think the self-publishing route was much better. And actually, the royalties are higher in self-publishing than they are in traditional. So it's just a matter of buckling down. But I will say over the last year or two, I got more training and I sharpened up my book. So it's very important to have very good book covers. And one thing I added at the end of my chapters of this last book was guiding words for dementia caregivers, which is a list of principles at the end. Because not everybody reads a full book, especially if they're dealing with somebody with dementia. But it was emotional. but everything just seemed to happen at the right time. I wrote it during the pandemic and released it once, but realized I got to go back and get help with this. And that's when in September I released it. It went to bestseller in categories on Amazon. Yes.
Wow. So, what are some of those principles? You don't have to go to all of them, but what are some of those principles that you talk about at the end of the book that folks should be aware of?
Well, probably the one that I talked about the most was validation of the person's feelings is very important, but it's not easy to do. This is just, and to realize that they still are themselves. They haven't lost who they are in spirit, in their heart. I had friends of my dad who knew my mom say she wasn't herself anymore, but in reality she was. The other thing was communicate, ask for help. But it is the biggest challenges is usually there are siblings and people in the families in most cases that don't participate and don't help. It's not an easy thing to deal with, but we have to kind of accept the way it is. And maybe there's something going on with them. There's other stuff. I'm trying to think of what they are. I must have to pull out my book right now. But one thing is the power of music and love. I can't stress enough that we aren't doing enough with music. Although there are nonprofits, there's a lot of stuff going on related to that. People are doing it, but not near as much. We could really tackle this problem better because they're making a lot of breakthroughs with medications and so forth, but it's not going to be one thing that solves this problem. And we can be doing music now and it's free and there's no side effects that aren't good. So I recommend that, but sure, it can be a little difficult to bring it to them, especially, with the pandemic that went on. But hey, my friends do it through FaceTime, all kinds of stuff. So yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. For those that are watching, I'm going to bring in Sasha, and Dan may have some questions as well. I don't know if Lee will because he's off camera at the moment and all in that space. But you are also a entrepreneur, and you talk about that entrepreneurial spirit that you have. So what advice would you give for folks that are thinking about going into entrepreneurship? Because like I said, you started that window cleaning business there in the Midwest. So what advice would you give for those that are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs?
Well, I'd say don't let your fears hold you back. But from my standpoint, looking back, if you can get some capital, it's definitely help. It was tough to keep my business going because I started it with no money, but it certainly is possible. And I'm actually going to probably be starting some guiding services for caregivers online, which will be sessions. So I'm kind of going right back into my old, starting something new. It's definitely possible. And just keep moving forward. It's going to happen if you put the word out. You're generally going to get business. You can't wait till it's perfect to start. That's true with writing. It was true with my business. I learned as I went. So it might have been better, if you could get trainings and so forth on whatever you're going into. If you don't have that, that certainly is better. But it's not necessary. That's why a lot of people are getting into even the tech industry without going to college anymore through training. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Sasha is actually a masterful musician in addition to being a great chess player and also a master investor as well. So, Sasha, I don't know if you have any thoughts about the power of music in health and things along those lines, because I know you've gone through some health issues, both yourself and with your wife. So I didn't know if you had any thoughts about the importance of music to the healing process.
I think music is by far the most important part of human lives. There it should be, not only for people with medical needs, but for absolutely healthy people. And it's right now, it's all there. You can go on YouTube and you can listen to any music in thousands of different interpretations, and you can compare one interpretation to another and see or hear the differences. And this is such an enlightenment which never was possible before YouTube offered that opportunity. So right now, let's see, for example, I think after movie Shine, where the pianist who was got traumatized by trying to play Rachmaninoff's third piano concerto. I was fascinated with this. Well, I knew this concerto before, but now I was really fascinated to find out more about it. And I went to YouTube and I started to listen to different great pianists playing that third piano concerto by Rachmaninoff, and the cadences are very different. And I started to, even without looking who is playing it, I could recognize this pianist or another one who is playing that. And it's becoming almost, you can spend, sometimes I can't even go to sleep. I'm going to sleep at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, because there is so much to listen. There's so much to learn from great masters, great composers, great interpreters. It's a lifelong obsession. And of course, the question is that, how you acquire the necessary experience, knowledge in understanding the music. This is by far very important question, because I remember a friend of mine, deceased now, unfortunately. He was a very well-known coach in gymnastics, and he always, on Mondays, he was going to one particular downtown jazz club. He was listening to jazz music. I'm familiar enough with jazz music, and he always was trying to get me to join him. But most of the times I was busy myself performing music. So one Monday, finally, I was free, and I agreed, and I joined him in the club. And so we ordered a couple of beers, and it was very, very talented group of musicians played that night. I knew actually a couple of them, and they were playing fantastic, mostly standards, jazz standards, but very good interpretation, good improvisations. And I looked at my friend, his name was Gary, and I asked him, Gary, what are you listening to? I know you have very, sorry to say, limited background in music, never mind jazz music on a certain level. So what do you really understand what these people are doing here on stage? And he said, it doesn't matter. I just enjoy ambience. It's a beautiful place. I enjoy my beer. They're playing wonderful music. And that's just more than enough for me. I said, but Gary, you're missing so much. Look at their interpretation. Look at their improvisations. Look at how it's doubling down and another one, then their double improvisations. You just don't get it all because you just don't understand it. He says, but that makes me even happier because I enjoy this music maybe even more than you do, because you do understand everything. So you're critical how this guy is improvising, how that guy is improvising, and whether they're doing all the right things or so on. But I don't need that because I don't understand that, and I just enjoy it and I have a great time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I was astonished. I started to see wisdom of what he just said. And I said, yeah, indeed, I'm listening very critically what they're doing, and I do understand what they're doing. But nevertheless, I'm trying to analyze everything, every note, and so on. And he doesn't, but he enjoys it, and probably even more than I do. So I'm also contradicting myself, because I just before said that how it's important to acquire knowledge and experience in different types of music in order to enjoy it. On the other hand, I'm contradicting myself, saying that maybe it's not even so important if you're listening to Moonlight Sonata Well, you probably don't understand everything what's going into it, and there is a counterpoint. There is so much in that relatively simple piece that you can play. I played it when I was 12 years old, maybe even earlier. But
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I hear
well,
what you're saying.
great art, knowledge, experience, and in my opinion, the music is a great part of our lives. Unfortunately, people who don't listen to music, and this is a big a troubling thing for me. How these people will ever get involved in music? Is it through music education in schools, at least even rudimentary, even if they would know just names of major composers? So that gives them a trampoline to go to YouTube and start to listen music of different composers. So I don't have a clear cut answer to this question.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That actually, and then I don't know if Dan's got any thoughts, and then of course we'll get to some of the other very valuable and interesting things that are going on in the world. But John, do you think that we are teaching enough of the creative arts in the school system, and is that something that you would like to see done more of, and even in some of our retirement homes? Because I know here in Durham, where I'm at, there are some folks that stay engaged in music in order to stay mentally active and even emotionally connected, and in some ways even spiritually connected, using the music as well in that sense. But I'm just wondering how good a job you think we in society are doing using the music as something to not alleviate, but to put us up in the space and all in that, and to give us some very sound background. John?
You're talking to me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard Durham, and then I thought you were talking to one or the other.
No, I'm here in Durham. I'm here in Durham, so that's no problem.
A lot of what they're doing in the schools today, so I'm not sure I have an answer to that because I don't have children right now. My best friend is a music teacher, not in schools, but on his own. One thing, I don't want to get off track from the topic. I do have a friend that's mother is a classical musician who has dementia, and I've been guiding her through it. But unfortunately, her mom is afraid to pick up the instrument because she feels like she's not going to be able to do it right. So she hasn't done it. But I don't know if I can answer what's going on with that now. That's somewhere where I do want to possibly reach out. I think there are some schools around our area in Wisconsin, that's where I'm from, that are bringing children from schools who play music into nursing homes. Mm-hmm. So it's something that if I decide to go the route of nonprofit with that I would definitely consider, and I'm certain it would be a great thing for everybody.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Did you mention being from Wisconsin? Because that's actually where I went to school over there at Marquette. Unfortunately, we went out too early in the NCAAs and all in that space. But I was definitely rooting for them and all along those lines. And we'll see who among the 16 become the national champ and everything. Dan, do you have any thoughts about this? And then we'll get into some other issues that are going on around the news. I'm going to see if Lee's available. If he wants to come up, so I'll bring him up, even though he's off camera, and all in that space and all in that kind of way. But did you have any thoughts around this issue? And definitely, I'm glad that John was able to make it to share what he's got going on in his own life and with his own caregiving that he did for his mom and everything before she passed. But I don't know if you had any thoughts based on your own life experiences.
Yeah, no, I think what John has done is very commendable. Alzheimer and other memory issues are very difficult on families and their caregivers. It's very difficult. I've had family members who have suffered from it. I've particularly enjoyed the discussion about music, and I enjoy music for music's sake. I've always enjoyed classical music. When I was studying for different doctoral programs and that kind of thing, I'd always loved to listen to classical music. I'd enjoy it. Relaxes the mind. there's also a spiritual element to music that can connect you with higher powers of heaven, and open your mind to sensitive feelings and tender inspirations and that kind of thing. So I like that. I used to perform opera workshop and that kind of thing when I was in college, but I haven't done a lot of that. I mean, choral groups and that kind of thing, but I haven't done a lot of that in my older years. So I have to defer to Sasha and his wonderful expertise in music and so many other things.
Yeah, he's definitely got a lot of expertise in that. John, before we defer to the other world issues and everything, you did mention that you had 2 other fictional books. If you could just give us maybe a short sentence as to what those books are about, and definitely how they can be reached. And I'm imagining that's also on Amazon as well. But you can just tell folks a little bit about the fictional books that are outside of the realm of what you've been doing in the nonfiction world.
Okay. Well, just so you know, at the moment, a couple of them are unpublished on Amazon, but I wrote a short story, a play on the political divide called Divided. It's about a family that's divided by an election, similar to the Trump election, and how, a bunch of twists and turns happen in it. And in the end, they try to come together as a family, but society stays divided and kind of forces it to. My other book, I'll just say this, along with my male members of my family, I'm a recovering addict, 33 years. But my fiction book that I wrote was actually a series of short stories about 12-step recovery that I started writing them for a magazine, and they have messages about different aspects of being in the 12-step program that are fictional. They're kind of ironic stories, but I am going to revise those books and republish them. I'm just trying to go all in on this recent book. So
that makes a lot of sense. As a way to segue into what's going on in the world, what is your take on the divide that is going on in the world and all in that space? Because you did mention that one of the novels deals with a divided family, and I do know some families that have been divided over various issues, including even some LGBT and bathroom issues that were going on here in North Carolina several years back and everything. But I was just wondering, what is your take on the divisions that are taking place in the United States and even in the world?
You're talking to me, correct?
Yes, that is correct. You, John.
Well, I'm a person that just happened to be close to people that were like on the other side, as far as voting. I actually, in the 2016 election, voted for Hillary Clinton because my mom remembered her or confused her with being her best friend, and she wanted her voted for, and my mom couldn't vote, so I voted for her there. But I knew a lot of people that went the other direction, so I actually heard their reasons. And I think a lot of people make assumptions about people and they don't realize who it is, it's kind of a tough question to answer now. I think it's going to unfold over time. I think things can go to a certain level, but I think communication is a key thing, and most people that I know anyways just kind of write off who they see as the other side and feel like they can't interact with them. A matter of fact, I've even talked to people that are into some of the conspiracy stuff that I know, and I haven't written them off. One of them lost a family member, and they didn't have any family, so I was supportive to that. And I've had to hear all that all along, and there's nothing I can do to convince them. So all I do is listen and sometimes cringe a little bit on what I hear, but I'm not sure. God, it's hard to know, but I think things are going to unfold, in my opinion, in a way that I think it'll be for the better, but it's going to be a long road, I think.
Yep, I hear you. And definitely, I'm going to agree with you. You definitely have to listen. You definitely have to be willing to hear different sides. We even do that here on this show because me and Dan and me and Sasha don't always agree, but we do oftentimes have respect for each other and respect for our different opinions and all in that space. Hey, Sasha, just along those lines, what is going on? And I don't know if John's got any thoughts about this, but it is a important world of affair and all in that way. But what is happening currently on today, Thursday, the 23rd in Ukraine? And also, if you have any comments on this protest that is going on over there in France around pension reform. But we'll start off with the Ukraine and all in that space. But any thoughts on what's taking place in Ukraine on today, Thursday, the 23rd?
Ukraine is now ready for its attack on Russians. It's already received enough weapons from US, from the West, NATO countries, and many others, by the way. Putin completely blew away his chance given to him by Emperor Xi. The deal was that Emperor Xi basically, I heard very interesting commentary, he came to Putin and saying, okay, Vladimir, I have two deals for you. One is bad and another one very bad. Okay, where would you like to start? Okay, here's a very bad deal. Ukrainians will wipe you out from the Ukraine. You will lose your power in Moscow as a result. And then your future is somewhere between one of Gaddafi and one of Saddam Hussein. You choose which one you prefer. Now, it's a very bad scenario. The best scenario is that if you will go along with my 12 points peace plan, in this case, I will be able to save not only your life, but you will stay in power. I will make sure that you will stay in power. Russian people will support you. So Ukraine is a thing of the past, and you go ahead and you just build your country, make your people happy, make their life easier. And this is, I will guarantee you that you will keep the power. Putin blew it. He disagreed with this plan. So now he's on his own. There is no power in the world that will save him. On the other hand, Ukraine has only one chance for a successful counterattack. So they're not in a hurry to do it unless they have everything up and running and ready for this counterattack, including all the tanks, hopefully the warplanes, everything they need now. They cannot give it a try. Oh, it didn't work out. Oh my God. No, it's not going to work. And by the way, the Zaluzhny, who is at the head of Ukrainian war efforts, he said exactly that. We are going ahead only guaranteed 100% of success. We will never have a second chance. If it's not going to work out, no Western power will give us any more ammunition and weapons or so on, and it will become mishmash, will go into partisan war and something. So we will have one chance, and we will use that one chance 100% to all our abilities. So we are preparing very carefully. We are not in a hurry. Nobody is going to hurry up in this attack unless we are 100% ready and sure 100% that it will be successful. That's what's happening these days in Ukraine. I've heard lately the comments that, as you know, recently DeSantis said that effectively once in power, there will be no more help to Ukraine. And I'm not so sure how sincere he is in saying so. In my opinion, he wants to retain Trump's electorate. And when Trump said many times that there will be no more help to Ukraine, and his electorate supposedly agrees with that, so DeSantis repeating the same thing, he is saying, okay, so once Trump is gone, one way or another. Maybe he'll be locked up or whatever, any other reasons, or people will get tired of him. I will continue to Trump policies to the best of my abilities. So the electorate of Trump will migrate to DeSantis, and he will this way will win the nomination and will have a good chance to become next president of the United States. Dan, what do you think about this?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think that's the best result for everyone. I mean, the two, Trump is too divisive. Biden is too non-present and too old. He shouldn't be running. And plus, he's made a bunch of bad decisions and put the country in a very poor position economically and resource. And we're in the middle of a war, and he may even create World War III before we're over. It's just been handled very, very poorly. The leadership's been very, very poor. And, I mean, something happened to him. Look who we have to back him up with, Kamala. Gosh, heaven forbid that ever happened. So I pray for his health, at least for the next election cycle. DeSantis wouldn't be a bad choice, I think, because, a lot of Trump's policies were very effective. I mean, all the name calling and the bad hits he took, most of which were not, I don't think, really indicative. I just think they just hate him. I can understand why they hate him. It's just, he's a perfectly hateable person. But, Biden's a buffoon. And so it's sort of like the only things holding him together is Jill and Maalox or something. I don't know. I think that we need something else. And there's a real vacuum in power when you take those two guys, Trump and Biden, off the table. There's just no senior leadership that have emerged as being effective. I think DeSantis has been effective for the right, and I just don't see anybody on the left or the wrong, as I like to say it, that would really have the leadership and star power to pull anything off. I just don't see it. I mean, you got crazy Warren and crazy Bernie, but we know that won't work. And if it ever does, heaven help us all. So I don't know.
Dan, how do you think DeSantis will do in foreign policy and all in that space? Do you think he'll be strong enough with what's going on in Ukraine? And there are some people that have concerns about his immigration policies and things in that space, and even his relationship with some of the Latin American and definitely Caribbean countries, as he is very much involved in Florida politics and all in that space. So how do you feel he will do? I mean,
I think he'll be fine. It's like any president. It isn't just the president, it's the team that is built around him. And I think that there'll be enough pros around him to fill in any foreign policy gaps. But the big issue is leadership, and he is a leader. I mean, we've seen him exercise strong leadership in Florida, and he's been very, very effective there. He supports many of the policies of former President Trump, but he's not crazy about it, and he's well-spoken. And he's really, far less divisive, and he believes in freedom and liberty and all those things. So, I would support DeSantis. The reality is, though, that Trump is likely to get the nomination.
Yeah, I mean, this is a strong possibility he could get it. I guess the question I've got, and this is even for Lee, if he wants to jump in, because I just see that he's back on, and I know he's trying to get on this whole time, is that in some ways, some people were very glad that DeSantis took on a major corporate power and everything, but some people were not pleased the way that he handled it. But he did tackle and go against Disney. Disney is very much of a major force there in Florida, and he had some thoughts around some of the LGBTQIA rights and other things that he went against Disney. And there was even some talk that Disney, which is a major business player in Florida, could have possibly left if they did not get the kind of give and take kind of things that they wanted on their side.
Right, that was never going to happen.
Idle threats.
Yeah, bibbity bobbity boo, right?
So, please, what are your thoughts?
Dan, tell me, what are your thoughts on Christie? Because I've heard a comment lately on one of the channels that he's a great debater, and he could actually one-on-one, he could wipe out Trump and DeSantis and anybody else. What do you think?
Christie is a fat pig. I don't like him. He's a boil on the butt of the Republican Party. He would not garner broad support from the American people. He'd be about as effective as Mitt Romney running for president at this point, right? He's not really. He's a rhino. He's a Republican in name only. He's not someone I would see as being a very effective alternative at all, despite his ability to talk and shoot off his big mouth.
Good morning, Dan. Wasn't he in the primary in 2016?
Yes,
yep.
He was.
Yep.
He didn't do so well back then.
No, he won't do. He'll even do worse now. He doesn't have any base. Only the Rhino base would even think of supporting him. That's why he's being thought of as an alternative at all. Because Liz Cheney's certainly a lost cause. She shot herself in the foot. So he's just a Rhino alternative. It's not going to happen. The Rhinos just don't have enough on their own, so they're forced to kind of slide with the mainstream no matter who they get. That's why they weren't happy about Trump, but at least they won, right? So then you just tried to undermine him for 4 years, which really didn't work all that well for them. No, it's not a good idea for America to elect Donald Trump again. Because he's so divisive, and has a lot of good ideas. Part of the problem, and I think the reason, first of all, I think he's a narcissist, right? And I think his leadership style is just harmful. Although his policies are great, especially compared to Biden. His policies were very effective. Everybody blames him on the coronavirus thing. Big deal. He responded quicker than anybody else would have been able to, and with respect to that, and we've learned that most of the coronavirus crap was fraudulent anyway. A lot of the information we were giving, a lot of the strategies, the CDC, they just didn't know what to do.
Dan?
A lot of the information was false. Looks like the Chinese launched that from the lab, and they denied that for what, 2-3 years. And yeah, go ahead, Lee.
This is a question for everybody, but specifically you, Dan. Does it really make a big difference who the president is? There was a hearing the other day with Rand Paul was asking, I think it was Anthony Blinken, for the funding research papers and stuff like that. And Blinken basically said, pound sand, we're not giving you it. You're entitled to it. It's not classified. We're just not giving it to you. So does it really make a difference when the administrative state basically tells Congress or the president, you're irrelevant, we'll do what we want?
Well, that was kind of the question that I was directing toward you and everything, Lee, because I'm wondering whether DeSantis or anybody else is going to have the I'll just use the term, the balls to take on corporate America and the lobbyists and all in that space. Because we do know a lot of times, both on the Democratic and the Republican side, they oftentimes are dictated by the corporation. So that I will give DeSantis, that he actually took on what sounded like it was a one of those sacred cows and everything by going against a major corporation. Because if you think of Florida, one of the first things you think about is tourism, and definitely if you think about tourism, Disney comes to mind. So he definitely, whether I agree with him or not, that was very much of a bold move on his part, because he was like, he wanted to stand up for his principles, whatever those principles were. And I may not agree.
And Disney had to change their leadership because they bungled that situation so badly. And they went back to the former leader, and I think that was a good choice. Disney just misread the tea leaves. They thought they could get away with whatever they were doing. And, they forgot that they're supposed to be family centric, and they're supposed to be a company of traditional American values, and not about woke values. And they found out that that was a bad corporate decision, a bad risk, and it cost them. And they got spanked, which they should have been spanked, because shame on them for trying to shove things down the American people's throats that most of the majority of American people don't want. And, a lot of these companies are learning that. Look at the tech industry now. They were so pro-democratic, so anti-Trump, and many of them are losing employees and going under, and the banks that supported them are going under. It's just kind of interesting. What goes around comes back around ultimately. And, their masters are not going to save them. Well, I guess they did. They stepped in to save that bank in Silicon Valley, right? They bailed them out. Anyway, it's a sad situation. Now, having said that, America is about choices, and whatever people decide to do, they're going to do. And that's the way it should be. It's just part of it. And but the point is that there's always consequences for those choices. I mean, that's the way it's always been. That's the way it should be. So people that don't want to work, they're only going to get supported so long on the unemployment rolls, and then they got to go find a job, right? Because suddenly the money doesn't come in anymore. Guess what happens? You have to go get a job. And I mean, there's just realities with life, or create a business, or write a book or whatever, right? But you just can't sit there and expect other people to pay your way. That's not how life works. It never has, and it never will. So people that like to sit back in their haunches and not do anything to contribute to society, they deserve what they get. That's exactly it. And people who choose to live in alternate lifestyles, what comes around goes back around. It's just the way it works. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a lot of sympathy. I mean, if that's what they choose to do, I mean, certainly everybody has a choice to do it, but you can't force people to accept what you decide to do if it also tramples on their rights. And
you can't force people to accept what they want to do and everything, but you also don't know that, in my opinion, that we have that much right to be trying to dictate what people do in their own bedrooms and in their own houses and all of that space.
Yeah, I don't see anybody making laws against that.
Mark, it's just not about
places around the world that those are laws. I just mentioned yesterday about Uganda. Those are entire laws that are in the world and other places, and there are places even in the United States that it is against the law and everything. As a matter of fact, there is an action that many males enjoy and many women enjoy as well, and I'll just leave it at that. That is technically against the law. Now,
let me
that's another matter.
Some people actually read history books and see what's caused the fall of many cultures and societies in history. And, maybe Ugandan leadership looked at that and said, we don't want that to happen to us. Maybe we should pass a law against this. And truthfully, there's no way to know what's happening in their bedrooms and that kind of thing. So for the most part, it's just a statement of.
You say there's no way, but Alexa's listening to us all the time. So Alexa and all these apps and everything are listening to us constantly. So there is ways that people can
turn it off. Turn it off. If you're gonna.
Even when you turn it off, it's not really off.
Mark, and don't bring it into your bedroom.
Unplug it.
This doesn't have to be in your bedroom. It can be in the house. Do you know the powers of some of these devices?
Oh, Mark, you're just paranoid. Yes,
I'm not paranoid. I've just realized that sometimes you say something and then it's a known fact that if you look at something or you say enough stuff, you'll check on your internet and see how much that stuff is actually then going into your whole algorithms and everything. That's a known fact.
I'm with you on this one, Mark.
Say what?
Yeah,
I'm with you on this one.
That is true. That people do. monitor that kind of stuff. The government does it. Amazon does it. Hi, Alexa. How are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
By the way, I don't know if you're aware that today, the president of TikTok is testifying before the Congress, and there is a great deal of essentially spying or perceived spying by their algorithm on almost any information on individuals, and that information could be related to Chinese government.
It is.
And it has to be somehow stopped.
Yeah,
I agree.
And some countries are doing that. Some countries and some parts of the world are definitely taking some very active steps against TikTok, and not just TikTok. I mean, it's Instagram, it's Facebook, it's a number of other ones. I mean, we've got slapped so many times by some of these tech companies, it's not funny. So and I know that both Nick and Kim have talked about that in the past. I know we're winding down, so I've got to get a closing remarks from John if he's got any thoughts, but I was going to bring up some other issues around the world just quickly that we can talk about on tomorrow's show, since that'll be the last one for this week. But I did see that Australia was taking a step to give a voice, and hopefully Shaquille will be coming in to those that are indigenous people from that area. So they're actually going to give them a voice in their version of national politics and all along those lines. So that is a major referendum that is going on. I think that there was something similar in Canada where the indigenous people have a voice there, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, Sasha, and all in those spaces. But I do think that I heard something like that recently. There is a Microsoft co-founder that had his big boat tip over and all in that way, and that was over there in Edinburgh, Scotland. So that was something else that was in the news. So he had
Don't
that
you
big
cry
boat.
about these billionaires that have their boats tipped over?
Yeah, I'm just crying about it left and right. The boat is tipping over. He got all that money, and now the money's
Well, did it tip left or right? I don't know. I can't remember.
We don't know which way it tipped. It could have been any one of those ways that it tipped it. Hungary has said that it will not arrest Putin. So that is what they have said, that according to Prime Minister Orban's chief of staff. So I guess if he goes to visit Hungary, he's okay.
Why not? He's a war criminal.
Hey, they definitely have declared him a war criminal. So why they're not going to do that is along the line is very much of a mystery. The U.S. Navy is denying Chinese claims that it drove away an American destroyer. So I guess the Chinese are saying that a destroyer came there and that they drove it away. And in UK court, the Nigerian senator is guilty of an organ harvesting plot. So apparently he was over there harvesting all kinds of organs and doing that illegal action. And over there, once again, in Australia, apparently there is a new giant species of trapdoor spider. So we're going to find out from Shaquille why all of these crazy things are going on in Australia and all along those lines. And a Canada lawmaker quit Trudeau's party amid China allegations. So it's not just here in the U.S. that we're having folks that are dealing with government issues and government conspiracies, but I know that Sasha is not the biggest fan of Trudeau, and apparently one of his fellow lawmakers has quit the party amid China allegations. So I guess they're saying that China has.
Mark, I don't know if you heard that President Biden is visiting Canada today, and he's going to meet his friend Trudeau, I guess.
Yeah, he's going to go there, and apparently there's a big issue. I know Chris, who is not here and hasn't been here for a while, even though I keep inviting him, but he is still doing his other shows, and all in that space is France is having an issue with trash, because apparently trash is just piling up left and right on the streets of Paris. And we do know that Paris has this romantic notion of a lot of people, but I don't know that it's going to be all that romantic in that sense.
Pierre Lepew.
Pepe Le Pew. And immigration is fueling Canada's largest population growth of over 1 million. So it looks like a lot of folks are migrating to Sasha's area. So I guess, Sasha, you're going to have to deal with a lot more people coming into your country, because apparently y'all are getting ready to go and have the largest population growth of over 1 million. So maybe these are folks coming from New York, maybe even Madison, because Madison isn't that far from the Canadian border and everything. So, John, I'm going to let you close out, because we've actually gone a little bit over and everything. But if you have any final thoughts that you want to share with our audience as our special guest for today and everything, and maybe you can tell Sasha if you're going to be moving over there from Madison to Canada, because that's not that far away.
Well, I've only been up in the wilderness up there in the Boundary Waters, and I don't want to go back, but too much work. But hey, I'll write off of something somebody else said that I've said during when elections for presidents. Don't let somebody else determine your future. Become your own president. Be a president of your own life, of your own economy. Don't let these things stop you from succeeding in life. We can vote, but we only have so much power. And no matter what, we're going to get through it, no matter who it is, no matter what happens. So I feel like don't let that distract you, because if I let that put fear into me or whatever, even on these social media platforms, I use them for my book sales and stuff. I'm not going to stop just because they say there's possible spies on there and so forth. So that's my message. Be president of your own life.
I appreciate that. I think that that's something that Lee talks about. He might have put that in one of his polls and everything, because I do know that he oftentimes puts his polls out on social media. So maybe our new poll will be, should you be president of your own life? I think that could be a new poll for you, Lee.
I like that.
I like it, but I would add something to it. Be present in your own life also.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it too.
I didn't want to get in too many opinions and everything at the end of the show, so I figured I'd put that in instead. So
That's
fine.
That's good.
We
Thank you for
appreciate
coming.
it. Hopefully you can come back and talk about more around dementia and other things, but we definitely talked about dementia, music, and a number of things that are going on in the world. But we'll be back tomorrow. I don't know that there is a special guest on that one, but we'll still have great discussions. And I know that on tomorrow, right after the news show, we'll be having a direct report from Kyiv, because I do believe that Sasha will be bringing in Ivan, who has been giving us these great videos and these great reports from what is going from the front lines of that particular war and that particular battle. So we're looking forward to his conversations, as well as those of the military expert, Jonathan Lockwood, because I think both of them will be there and all in that space. So it should be a great show, and we're definitely looking forward to it. And don't forget that on Saturday, if you're a chess fan, you definitely want to be checking out Sasha's chess show as well. And that'll be
actually, chess is also very good for people with dementia if they have ability to play chess. That requires concentration, requires a fair amount of calculations, memory, and many other qualities. So I wouldn't rule that out as very helpful.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we're getting ready to get out of here, and we'll be back with
Sasha,
some other shows.
that's an idea. Maybe Trump and Biden should play a game against each other.
It's going to be a horrible game. Although I think Trump was claiming somewhere many years ago that he was the best in his school, and actually he was planning to become a chess grandmaster, but then he became too busy with other stuff, and
didn't work out.
So let me get this right. We're going to start a chess tournament, and it's going to feature, maybe we can start right here on Pod TV. So a chess tournament that will feature Biden against Trump, AOC against DeSantis, and Camilla against the fine governor of Texas. What do y'all think? That sounds like a great matchup, and we can see who wins in best 3 out of 5 or something along those lines. So
Melania probably could take part of it.
Yes, definitely.
She'll probably clean them all.
Are you aware of the fact that she's nowhere to be found? Because she's horrified by the fact that she could be arrested as well, because she was taking in her possession all different gifts and valuables that she was not supposed to. And she's scared that Trump has more than enough money to pay for his lawyers and his troubles, but he's not going to give her anything to fight her legal troubles. So she's just disappeared. Maybe she went back to Slovenia.
Yeah, maybe she did. And along those lines, we're going to add the 4th match will be between Melania and Hillary. I know that Dan will love that match and everything.
See you guys tomorrow. Take care.
See y'all tomorrow.
See you. Bye-bye.
See you. Thanks a lot.
John, thanks for coming.
Appreciate you, John.